Alright, it is time for the next sci-fi fantasy and weird title with Brown Girl in the Ring by Nalo Hopkinson. Woohoo! This one's Canadian. Canadian! Hey everyone, it is Shannon, and I'm excited to share my thoughts on my 12th sci-fi fantasy and weird title, Brown Girl in the Ring by Nalo Hopkinson. This was written in 1998, and it is another standalone. So yes, for standalones, loving the standalones. And it is a dystopic urban fantasy magical realism type of book set here in Toronto, but a dystopic Toronto where the city and the suburbs are literally cut off from each other, and I believe the city is kind of sort of left to fend for itself, and that is where the story mostly takes place, where we follow Ti-Jeanne, who is a new mother, and she is living with her grandmother, and it's all sort of takes place around sort of Cabbagetown, Riverdale Farms, Allen Gardens are sort of the place markers, so East Young, south of Bloor, north of the water, generally, although it does go into different places and stuff like that. But that's generally where it's centered. Yeah, so we have Ti-Jeanne, who's sort of like, working with, working on, not working on, but, coming to not coming to reality. She's, dealing with being a new mom. I love how it's dealt with so normally. Like, it's just like, she feeds her baby when it's hungry, and when it sleeps, she does other stuff. Her family is there to help her, like her grandmother's there to help her, but she still has to, tend to most of it herself. And I love how it's not this sort of huge separation or huge. It's weird. There's not a huge, although the baby is there a lot, there isn't a huge focus on it, which really kind of normalizes it for me. And I really appreciated that. It's kind of a weird thing to appreciate, but I really appreciated it. And I'm like, how often do we see a young mother character that she loves her baby, she has a baby, and it's not the sole focus. Like, all of this other stuff is going on. She has to deal with her grandmother, she has to deal with her sort of the guy, the father, and then she has to deal with this drug dealing, magic using tyrant. And that's not even to go into the actual plot driving, force of the fact that the premier needs a new heart. So there's like this sort of organ harvesting thing going on. Like, it's crazy. It's crazy. There's so much that's going on in this book. Some of the things that I really loved about the character, or about the book, is the character of Ti-Jeanne. I also loved her grandmother, who is this sort of healing woman character that does magic and also is like the local healing lady people know to come to her for help. And then, but also she does like ritualistic magic. The magic in this is fascinating. It's also a little scary because it's sort of like about calling on, I don't know, they never sort of term them. They always give them very specific names. So I don't know whether it's supposed to be spirits of people who have passed, or energies, or deities, or what. But they call them, and they are embodied by what they have been called on, and then ask for advice and guidance in the situation. And it's a very, very evocative and pretty creepy. Like, for me, the possession element is what makes it creepy. Magic, always okay with, love magic. But the sort of being overtaken by something else, even temporarily, just is like really is high on the freak scale for me, like just like makes me uncomfortable. So that, but it was wild, and it was really cool to see in terms of like a different kind of magic. And people always use the term magic system, and I don't like that term at all. It's just like, it's magic. It works because they tell you how it works, or they don't tell you how it works. It's just like, it's magic. It's just magic. It's magic. Anyway, so the magic in here was awesome, but it also was terrifying because there were also other elements where it was used against people's will and to do really horrible things. And that's one of the things I found really, actually, sadly, very challenging about this book, is a lot of the things that happen are horrible. Horrible, horrible. Like, organ harvesting, that's always going to be horrible. Dystopia for me is always like a hit or miss on whether or not I really enjoy it or I find it very uncomfortable. This one, it was actually sort of like a double whammy because it's set in Toronto and all these places I'm very familiar with. However, it's a dystopia, and then it's very disturbing. I actually ended up, this is kind of embarrassing to say, but I actually ended up having to read this book during the day. I wasn't comfortable reading it at night. because it was too close to home. Literally, I live in Toronto. So anyway, but I did really love the characters. I did really enjoy the journey of Ti-Jeanne. I love that she was a new mom, and it was really cool to see her, like just, you know, taking her baby with her to do all the things that she needed to do, and I really appreciated that. So yeah, and I love the magic. But one of the other challenges I had with this one though was that people didn't tend to be very supportive of each other. Like even her grandmother really gave her a hard time. It would always show disapproval, would frequently show disapproval. She also showed approval if she thought Ti-Jeanne did something good, but she often would like judge her on her choices and was, either, vocal about it or very clear, even if it was subtle, that she was not did not approve of what she was doing. That being said, Ti-Jeanne was always like, I don't want to use the term allowed, but she always did what she wanted. So that was awesome to see too. And we don't always make good choices. That's just reality, So there was something really cool about that as well. It's also how we learn. So anyway, so I'm going to actually mostly leave it here because I have some spoilery zone things that I want to talk about, especially in terms of like, there was one point in the book where I almost decided I wasn't going to keep reading. It was so disturbing, and I want to specify what that is. If you're interested, I'll have it as the first thing in the spoiler zone. But overall, it was really cool to see Toronto set dystopic, and I really enjoyed the characters and the story overall. It was a hard one to get through. I thought it was well written. I found the characters, some of the character terms and terms of affection used, or terms that I was unfamiliar with in terms of the entities. I found it a little confusing, but it wasn't unclear. It was just a lot to take in, and so it was a lot heavier than I expected, but a very fascinating, interesting story. It's one that I think would actually make a fantastic TV series because there's a lot going on here, and it's set in Toronto, so like it's right here. Although it's dystopic Toronto, so you'd have to like make it look kind of creepy and stuff. But overall, I thought it was a really good read, and yeah, so very cool. Up next for the sci-fi fantasy and weird exploration, I'm going to be talking about Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep by Philip K. Dick. So, okay, now we are going to head into the spoiler zone. So if you have not read the book or do not want to hear about very specific things, I don't think I'm going to talk about the ending, but I am going to talk about something very specific about the book. And actually, no, well, kind of two very specific things. The thing that disturbed me so much that made me stop reading, almost made me stop reading, was that the drug dealer character, he had this sort of servant type person, and it was very clear that he sort of went through them regularly, and he was able to have power over them, basically, so that they had to do what he said. And he ended up flaying her alive in front of someone else to get them to do what he wanted. Basically saying, like, if you don't do this, I'm going to do this to you. And that I don't think I've ever read flaying in a book. I've seen it in a couple of movies as something that happens, some of the horror movies, but I was like, it was so disturbing, and it was so disturbing to sort of see from the point of view of the character, or just be in the room when that was happening and not caring. It was the fact that not only did he do it, he didn't care, and he didn't need to. Like, there was lots of sacrificing and stuff like that, and blood magic type stuff, but flaying someone alive and not even caring and just sort of like, I'll just get someone else to do what she used to do. Horrifying. I almost stopped at that point because I'm like, if they're going to do that, what else is going to happen? But I think that was the worst. And one of the other things that I found a little like, and this happens in a lot of books and shows and stuff, is that, like, you see most of these characters and everyone is disconnected, but then as the story comes together, everyone is connected, including the fact that the drug dealer was initially someone that her grandmother was involved with, and then her mom, who disappeared, ended up being someone she saw all the time but didn't recognize, which felt like a little like, really? I don't like she was like the local woman who, you know, had sort of lost her mind. And I'm like, you wouldn't recognize your mom? That felt a little weird to me. So like, you know, initially it was all apart, and then like sort of like 4 of the 5 main players ended up all being related to each other, and I'm kind of like, oh, that's stretching a little bit. Although it happens all the time, and now that I've seen more like movies and TV and read more books, I know that this can happen, and I know that it can be very powerful. And it was very powerful when I found out who her mom was. I was like, oh my god, like I can't believe it. And like her mom had a great story, and I couldn't talk about it in the non-spoiler review because I didn't know how to work it in. But I really loved her mom's story, although it was very scary to have her mom be controlled by this other guy, and all the magic stuff was really creepy. But Ti-Jeanne like kicked major ass, and that was totally worth it. So yeah, so it was a challenging read, and I think this read and so one of the other ones that I read recently, I'm just like, oh, I think I need something a bit lighter, a little lighter for a while, because this was heavy, and I'm not sure what age group this is for. When I got it from the library, there was an classification thing on the side that I think is for students, and I would be, even for some of the language, I would be surprised. But I can imagine, I guess it would be high school level, but I couldn't figure out, I couldn't find a consistent scale for the different system. Although if anyone has a really good resource for how you find out what age a book is appropriate for, I'd really appreciate it, because I've been reading some of the things I've been reading recently. I'm curious, and what age group they are for. And so yeah, if anyone has anything like that, I would love it. And let me know, have you read Brown Girl in the Ring? What did you think about it? You know, and yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Thanks for watching.